All right, in the workshop today, I've got somebody's Martin guitar here. They wanted a setup done with strings, truss rod, all that stuff, and then they want me to fix the. They're having some issues with binding, clearly. This side was also coming undone, so I already fixed that side. But this side was a little more problematic because. You have your main primary outside binding, but inside you have like this old purfling ledge, and all of that binding was missing along the purfling edge. So I don't know if you can see the camera, but you have your primary, and then there's you have a very thin black and then a very thin white, and those are not the same height as this primary outside binding. So I ordered just some strips of, just comes like this, just the black and white. I had taken measurements, couldn't get exact, so I kind of got the closest thing, and it's slightly oversized, so I've had to thin it up a little bit using files and chisel on the drill press. But basically what I do is I laminate these two pieces together and basically use acetone. And the acetone basically acts as like a glue, well, kind of like a glue, but it kind of melts these two together. And so I sandwich them together and then basically come up with I don't know if you can see it, a black and white kind of binding. The black for this Martin guitar is a little thinner than this white strip, so I've had to kind of keep measuring slightly, kind of go over with, like, you can just use like a razor blade, just use a flat surface, and then kind of strip it through like that. I know there's fancy jigs and stuff you can buy that kind of, like, you can dial things in and thin it, but this is just a little repair job I'm doing here, so nothing crazy. And then the other tricky part is there's all this crap and gunk of old glue on this purfling ledge, so I've had to clean that off, kind of using X-Acto blades, being careful not to pull this out much more. It basically separates all the way up to where this tape is. That's kind of a visual reminder for me not to go past that. It also just kind of keeps it from pulling up more. The next part that's tricky is you want this to try to be an invisible repair as much as possible. So it's kind of lining up each piece, kind of butting it to the other one. I'm leaving it a little taller than the actual final binding just because I want to be able to go over it with an X-Acto blade once it's glued in and work it down to the exact height that I'll be joining it to. So basically the crucial things to line up is you want the light or the white color and then the border with the black to line up. You don't want to look kind of misaligned. It'll stand out like pretty clearly. So once that's pretty good, the next step I do is just to kind of make sure it's a good, the joints put up well and are slightly invisible, is I'll kind of undercut this one that's going to be going in. You can kind of see that. Kind of like that. And then kind of do the same on the old binding that's on here. And that way they can kind of, you have kind of this crossover joint. If I really need to, well, I'm not going to need to because I'm going to get it lined up perfectly, so never mind. I was going to say, let's say I glue it and then with fresh eyes, it doesn't really line up the way I thought. I would actually take the binding out and do it until it does line up perfectly. Just because when you have something that's just like a white and black, there's not a lot of gray between those two. So Anyway, I'll do that. And then I'm just gonna use some super thin viscosity super glue. And then I'm only gonna use masking tape. And then kind of work it all the way down bit by bit. And then, you know, just let it dry, maybe like half hour. I'm also being aware of this outside primary binding because there is a piece missing, so there's a gap. And so what I'm gonna do is make a small piece and wedge it in there and use acetone to melt it and kind of melt it into one kind of piece. And then I'll use like 2000 grit to 8000 grit kind of fine sandpaper, kind of like buff it together, kind of melt it together. So that's more or less how this repair job is gonna go.